Okay, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. I would just like to record, I think we've got Gary Kelleher as an apology. Yep, thanks for that, Kevin. Second, Kate, thank you. All those Yes, I do. I have a karakia. Haki roto, haki waho, kia tau te maore e. Kokiri nei, ina piki mina heki. Ko te rangamari e tātou. I rapu nei, tihei mori ora. Breathe in, breathe out, settle the emotions that stir inside of us. Through the ups and the downs, it is peace that we seek. So we have a public, we have Chris, who's going to be addressing us in public forum. Chris, congratulations, you're the very first one for, in recorded history, actually, I think, for, in the Audit and Risk Committee.
Is this good?
Yep, that's good there.
Good afternoon, councillors of the Audit and Risks Committee. Today, I'd like to speak on the Statement of Investment Policy, specifically the Responsible Investment Policy. I would like to strongly encourage the subcommittee to adopt option 3. Specifically, I want to urge the subcommittee to exclude investments in thermal coal, oil, and gas. As a young person, threat of catastrophic man-made climate change is omnipresent in my mind. We are the generation who will have to live through the heat waves, the fires, the floods, the storms, the food insecurity, the displacement of our communities, and the biodiversity lost caused by the alteration of the climate system on which we all depend, fueled by the extraction of coal, oil, and gas. Today, you have an opportunity to choose a policy that will determine if our regional council will assist in creating this nightmare, or if you will endeavour to end it. Please make your decision wisely for your children and for their children who cannot. We will remember your decision. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm open to any questions.
And thank you, Chris. Open up for any questions. No questions. Chris, thanks for coming along. It takes a lot to stand there in front of what might be a fairly daunting sort of group of people. We'll certainly take on board what you've said, so consider it. So, Kate, if you want to say something.
I don't think we've got the power of delegation, just so that you know that I think we can only recommend whichever one we recommend goes to council. Yeah. And so you may want to follow that up in the next council meeting when that recommendation goes to them as well.
Yes, in which case my submission is that you should recommend option 3.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And this is you're the second one. Sorry.
It's an important topic.
Well done. So yeah, so Alan Curry, you said
Adam, but Curitan.
Okay.
Yeah, kia ora, ko Adam aho, tōku whānau tipago ko Clay McLaren, no Luke Logan di Kotirana. I'm here speaking today on behalf of 350 Aotearoa. Just to, again, urge you to end your investments in thermal, coal, and oil and gas. I think the argument's compelling, and I think Chris just spoke, so I'll be very brief. We at 350, we're the New Zealand arm of the global climate movement that sprung up in every corner of the world 14 years ago. And we're known most for campaigning for divestment, getting banks, universities, ACC, and local government to withdraw their funds from fossil fuel industries. To date, we've already seen Auckland City Council, we've seen the Dunedin City Council, we've seen the Waikato City Council divested fully from fossil fuels, so it's very common, as we all know. And it's a real shame that OSC hasn't done that to date, but there's a real chance to rectify it now. We know that fossil fuel investments are a risk for both investors and the planet, which is why we've been calling for local institutions to divest from these companies, because if it's wrong to wreck the planet, then it is also wrong to profit from that wreckage. And so a failure to recommend to divest, we know the Otago Regional Council will be unlikely to divest if it's not recommended by this committee, and that would really directly challenge ORC's own climate credibility. Only a decade ago, tobacco companies were seen as respectable partners for public institutions, and we know that's no longer the case. And fossil fuel companies are increasingly being seen in the same light. Oil Change International has done a report saying the majority of fossil fuel reserves must stay in the ground. And so we know it's not acceptable for the ORC to profit from oil extraction when we know it must stay in the ground anyway. And as you can also see in Schedule 59 and page 59 in the schedule, excluding fossil fuels would exclude just 7% of eligible companies from ORC. And so we urge you to vote in favour of option 3, both common and additional exclusions. And I'd also like to note at this stage that fossil fuels should really be considered a common exclusion for these purposes. In the last 5 or so years, 40.5 trillion US dollars has been shifted away from fossil fuels. So it is really increasingly common. It's not an outlier. We've seen many councils do it. We've seen Shell themselves identify divestment movement as a material risk to its operations. So we know that it does impact the fossil fuel companies, and we know that New Zealand's major banks are doing it. So it's really common. While our focus is on fossil fuels, we do also urge the ORC to move out of the other asset classes, tobacco, alcohol, and pornography, as well as in the future actually prioritise ethical investment options specifically, which would be really good. I just want to briefly address 2 points that have been used in the past as arguments against divestment from fossil fuels. Firstly, the risk of lower returns and higher volatility, most importantly, as we can see in section 33 of the paper. We know that there's extremely good evidence that long-term returns of ethical investments are at least as good as, if not better, than others. We know that the social and environmental impact of companies affects financial performance. Good companies do well, and so do the funds or the councils that invest in them. In particular, we've seen Pathfinder's Ethical Growth Fund, which is by far the strictest adherent to ethical investment in this country, has achieved 6.8% ahead of the average KiwiSaver returns for that period. And over the last 2 years, it's achieved a whopping 18.6% returns per annum. So we know that it is profitable to divest. And secondly, the argument that the ORC can somehow push these companies to transition away from fossil fuels, I think has been used in the past, but that argument is a misnomer. For number one, the tiny proportion of investment proportionally, and of course, we also know that ORC is not and has never been an active shareholder anyway. So yeah, for now, we really urge you to recommend a divestment from fossil fuels, but we also urge you to look into the future of specifically ethical investment. So we know that can actually achieve higher returns as well, and we can take a step forward and not just do the bare minimum. So kia ora, look forward to any questions and hopefully debate at a final council meeting about this. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alan. Okay, you have a question.
I'm just intrigued that you've gone to ACC, and what was their response or reasons not to respond?
We had a long-running campaign to get ACC to divest. They haven't fully divested in the end. They've taken some steps. As you can imagine, there's always steps, right? There's just oil, coal, and gas, and the sort of scope 3 and stuff emissions. So they've taken some steps towards divestment. Their arguments against doing so was largely around risk and around. There was some arguments that they would be moving faster than other New Zealand super funds, and it would set a bad precedent. But in our view, it would set a great precedent. Yeah.
Thank you. That's perverse.
Cool. Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Look, we will be having a discussion in public around this, but we need to go into private. So, but if you want to hang around to come back into the public's,
I might head off now, but I'll be watching the minutes
Okay,
and watching the
that's
meetings when
fine.
it comes back to the public on the YouTube. So
Very
thank
good.
you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Good to see you. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so I'd like to move that we go into public excluded part of the meeting. The reason for that is we're looking at the annual report and audit management letter. We'll be looking at cyber risk, the managed fund report, and the strategic risk register. So if I could have somebody who's happy to perhaps move us into Thank you, Alexa. And seconded by Kate. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. Righto, so welcome to this public session of our Audit and Risk Committee meeting. We have the apologies, I think, recorded, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've had our public forum, just confirming the agenda. Is there anything further that needs to be added to this agenda? Oh, okay, yeah. So look, just to note that we have taken all the public excluded items first on this agenda.
You want to move a change to the agenda, or is that just noting it?
It's just noted.
Cool.
Okay.
Given I'm leaving at 3, but I would really love that I can
Yes.
appreciate that we may not get dealt with it today in my time. I'd love to have that, the funding.
Look, I think we will move on to the ethical investment first.
I'd
So,
really
yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
So hasn't been on my
That's
agenda
fine.
for
So
some time.
let's
I
just-
was-
We've got staff waiting for what?
Oh.
Well, we have two.
Oh, sorry,
This
then
is-
that's fine.
This should be straightforward.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
work time.
Okay, so we are moving on to the Waka Kotahi audit. But I need to confirm the minutes first, so the staff can come up while we do this. So for those committee members that can actually move this, confirmation of minutes, please, the first and the second.
Yep.
Kieran and Alexa, thank you. All those in favour? Good, thank you. We do have actions that we need to look at too. No, we haven't done that.
So I can speak
So
to this because I
there's-
have talked to Andrew about the internal audit. So we will be commencing it this year. We have decided to delay it till after Christmas because we've had the efficiency review and we're about to kick the cultural audit off, and we're also been working on council mark. So we will meet that action, and we are looking at asset management, potentially be that first audit topic. It's becoming a critical issue with flood infrastructure following the damage to areas up north. And we feel that is a good place for us to start with an audit, and I'll just continue to work with Andrew on that. But just noting, we do intend to commence that internal audit program within this financial year, but we just have delayed it because of those other reviews that are on.
Okay, thank you, Richard. All right, welcome Lorraine again. So I'd like to take it away.
Happy to take the paper as read. The key points that this is a procedural audit every 3 years from 19 to 22, 2019 to 22. It was only conducted this year. Really a very good report result, and just 2 minor issues that we're working to address.
Yeah,
Have you
look
taken
like
any
a fairly
questions?
complete result. So yeah, so we are moving the that we received this report. So Kate, the seconder, is Andrew, do you want to do that?
Yep, I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you, Lorraine.
Pass on Lorraine thanks to the team, because I know how in-depth those Wakatahi audits can be, and to come out with only 2 minor actions is a real credit to your team, and I know support from Nick and the finance team as well, so that's a great result.
Agreed.
Okay, quarterly people and safety reporting.
So this is our quarterly reporting. We've hopefully become quite familiar with the content now. We've got the health and safety and wellbeing reporting up first, and then the people reporting, which is something we've started this year. Happy, we've got Mark and Gina here, so happy to take questions from the group.
Yep, I'll kick off.
Tina.
Hey, on page, sorry, I just haven't got my page. Yeah, page 33, I've got the graph of the training participation numbers, which, you know, on those activities seem really, really good. How can I be assured or that it's not the same really health and safety conscious people just doing those, and it's not the whole, and that we're grabbing the whole organisation?
Absolutely. So one thing that our team has developed this year is a training matrix. So essentially we worked with every people leader across the organisation to identify their safety training requirements. That is then integrated into our safety system called Hamaru, which then outputs an overview of what they've completed, what they need to complete, and when something's expired. So it means that someone doesn't accidentally attend something multiple times, but it also means that they keep those safety competencies fresh, you know, and those skills up to date.
Yeah, so if I'm not partaking, how's that process sorted?
Not partaking in
In
training.
an appropriate training.
Yeah, so that would start with reminders from our team directly with that staff member, and then would basically elevate to their people leader, and we'll kind of go from there. So in some instances, you might have a training course and a staff member is not competent or, you know, not confident in doing that skill. One example would be like river safety, general water skills. So in those kind of circumstances, what we would do is actually adjust the work so that they would require that safety training. That makes sense.
Right,
Yeah.
So everyone that needs the help along is getting the help along.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Ian. Thank you.
Further questions, Andrew?
Thanks for the paper. Just always interested now that we're getting that human resource dashboard reporting, which is great to get. I see the turnover percentage has come down from last year to this year, so that's absolutely fantastic to see. The one that I just want to ask about is I see that the annual performance reviews have been done with staff, and every time I sort of think of that, sort of an annual performance review process, I'm just keen to hear your thoughts on that mechanism, and especially just with, I guess, the more modern take on it not being an annual review, but sort of continuous feedback, just because it is such an important process for the culture and performance of staff to get sort of this continuous feedback from their management, or from their manager, or from their direct person about their performance. So just sort of keen to hear your views on that.
Yeah, great. Absolutely. So coming in, I was reasonably happy to see what we had in place in terms of the performance framework, that it is an all year round process. It's not just based on a annual review, that there is a culture and expectation of regular one-to-ones between each team member and their people leader. But still there's obviously always room to improve. Just before we got underway with the end of year reviews, we took the time to give some refresher training to our people leaders on how they can do that most effectively and to maximise engagement. We're in a real talent war, so we have to get the stuff right, and we'll continue that with more training and development for our people leaders. We're just doing some refreshers now to support the goal setting process, and then I want to do some more sessions about how we have impactful one-to-ones, that we're not just going through the motions doing work updates, that we're having real conversations, that we're fully empowering our people and where possible coaching them to achieve their goals.
Right, no, that's good to hear. It can be quite there can be some challenging conversations in there for people to have. So so getting coaching around how to deliver messages, both positive ones and feedback improvements, you know, is really important. I know throughout all organisations, it's it is something that always has to be worked on. So yeah, good to hear that you are working on it.
The critical risk profiles too, good to see those and them being reported. And I think yesterday we were looking at the GPS tracking systems for vehicles. Sounds like you've got that side of things fairly well under control. But noting also that that seems to be one of the highest areas of incidents still on that bar graph that you're showing. So it's one of the top three. Keep at it. And, yeah. Are there any further questions on this report? Okay, so thank you very much. It's appreciated. It's noticed as well. So we do actually have to do that formally. Okay, thank you, Kate, and yes, Alexa, and all those in favour, please say aye.
Thank you. Our brevity is not, it's because the report is so good. It's not a lack of interest.
Yeah. Look, I think we will move on to the SIPO, the Treasury discussion, and we'll just bump that revised audit risk program into the next item.
Thank you.
This is 8.4. Yeah. Right, Nick, your hands.
Okay. Yeah. So this report and attached to it is a revised Treasury management policy and a revised SIPO. The key reason for the revision of both is around including a responsible investment policy in the SIPO. So that's not reflected in the Treasury management policy, but it is in the SIPO. So there's a draft placeholder section in the SIPO for that. And really the paper then outlines how we've come to that. And part of it was based on a workshop that you all had with JB Ware. So the information that's in here reflects what came out of that workshop, and essentially the options are for council for audit and risk to propose a change to the SIPO that would include a responsible investing policy, and then it's really just around the level that you want to go with that policy and what investments are excluded. And the one that has been put in there effectively is what currently happens. So we've outlined a few options in there. The first one is basically no change, which wouldn't have a responsible investing policy noted in the SIPO. The second one is to actually note what is been included in the SIPO, which is effectively what happens now. So that's what JB Ware currently basically excludes, but it's not formally documented. So those first two would have the same result, but the second one obviously is formally putting a policy into the SIPO and making it very clear what council is not invested in. And then the third one gives a range of other exclusions that audit and risk could choose to say, yes, we'd like to see those added as well. So basically it's there for audit and risk to discuss the level that they wish to take the exclusions to, assuming that you want to have an exclusion and a responsible investing policy in the SIPO at all. And then from there, that'll get finalised, and we'll take the SIPO and Treasury management policy through to council for adoption. Following that, once council's adopted it, JB Ware will just they will just implement that. Also to note, because this was a good opportunity, went through all of the Treasury management policy and SIPO in total and made number of other administrative changes, just to tidy up a few things that, there was some references. I think the Finance Committee was referred to, the Finance and Corporate Committee, and various things like that. And just around some of the things that we currently do with our interest and how we deal with it in our financial statements, because it's changed now that we've got external debt in that. So they're really just administrative, nothing really significant in any of those. And the key part of this paper and the discussion is around the establishment of a responsible investing policy and what may or may not be included in that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Now, we'd like to open this up for discussion.
Just because of the nature of this paper, I know there's quite a lot, maybe questions for Nick first.
Yeah.
And then, so we can
Okay,
follow
yeah, we'll follow that. We'll follow that. Okay,
because there is quite a bit in this.
Yep, that's good. So yes, let's open this up for questions first, and we'll follow up with discussion and debate. So, any questions? Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, Nick, I probably should have read it somewhere, but I can't just put my hands on it. Under option 3, where we have additional exclusions, which is ESG controversy.
Yep.
Who determines or who decides what dictates an ESG controversy?
JB Ware are using an external company that does all of that. I can't remember exactly what their name is, but they're basically who they use. And if a company has these particular controversies, they will get flagged on that list. So it's a list provided to them, and as a consequence of being flagged, they would drop out from permitted investments.
Right. So I presume there will be a level where that controversy becomes a tipping point. It could be, something could be highlighted in the news as someone's supposedly doing something wrong, but in fact they're not.
Yeah, so, I'd have to go back and
that's
ask JB
so
where exactly how it works. But it was in their presentation that they gave, outlining who they used, but exactly what criteria applies to make it hit there. If you look at that, the table that's on page 59. Currently under those controversies flags, only 6 companies out of the 14,500 globally that could be invested in would be flagged. So I don't know who they are, but you would imagine that's setting quite a high threshold to hit the flag.
Yeah. I won't know many names, but I could think of 1 or 2 recently. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Kate.
Maybe I just haven't seen it. I'm sorry. We've had a bit to read. The transition. So should we pick up today option 3, recommend it to council in October? Is there a need for a transition period because under this?
I'd have to go back to JB Ware. Obviously, if it's option 2, effectively there is no transition because that's basically exactly what they do. The other ones, whether there'd be a period where they need to take some time, but what we'd do is discuss it with them, and if they said, oh look, in order to get there they'd prefer to do that over a 3 or 6 month period, I'd then find that out and come back. Once you've been through here, we could answer that question for when it goes to council.
And second question is, and the terrible thing is giving someone like me a document that I don't look enough at in the Treasury Management Policy. Intriguing to see that you've got investment in irrigation schemes, and I can understand that, but it does make me wonder why we don't have potential investment into climate change mitigation, and that may be into buses quickly or something like that. Just saying, and I think it's a totally different long-term discussion, but it's one of those things we often don't see our own money as being a good means of investing change. The same.
Okay. So, yes, Alan. Oh, sorry, I've got you too, Andrew, but let's go to Alan first.
Thank you. Look, should this committee decide to recommend option 3, would you also be looking for direction on the revenue threshold to apply for some of these investments, which is noted in that text there of option 3?
Yeah, so option 3 wasn't here's, exclude all of the option 3 was option 2 plus any of those that you may want, whether it's all of them or just some of them. And yes, then revenue thresholds would need to be outlined as well. Thanks.
Andrew?
Thanks. Thanks, Nick. So just wanted to confirm question. Paragraph 33 is where there's a statement that says decreasing the number of companies available for investment will impact diversification, which will likely increase volatility, especially over the short term, but over the long term returns. Although they might be impacted, it's unlikely to be material over the long term. Does that statement apply to both option 2 and option 3, or was it mainly focused on option 2? I just was trying to recall.
That was covered in the workshop by JB Ware, and their view was that over the long term, and particularly the very long term, they thought that, as it was stated there, the returns probably would not be materially different. But over the short term, the more you're limiting your investable universe, and therefore you're limiting your diversification, the more likely you are to see volatility, and ups and downs. But they indicated over the long term, that's probably going to smooth out and not be as big an issue.
Thank you.
Just clarity, sorry, and so that paragraph relates to option 3, because option 2 is currently what's happening.
Absolutely, yeah, it would, because option 2, you're not going to really see any change from what we're currently getting.
Just want to make sure we got
Yep.
So yes, question.
I probably know the answer, but I'll ask it anyway. How does volatility in our investment returns then, how would you see that affecting us with the type of business that we run? Would it be material or not?
Yeah, it's interesting because we use the return off the managed fund to subsidise general rates, but obviously we make that decision when we set the general rate. So then, if the return is either less or greater, that effectively just flows into our general reserve. Yeah, and we have seen over the last couple of years, there has been a bit of volatility due to COVID. And we have had it move up and down, regardless of where it's sitting from an ethical investing point of view. But effectively, we take account of that it's not impacting, if you like, exactly what we rate, because we're actually managing that through our general reserve, and effectively, when there is ups and downs, we're smoothing that over time.
Can I just ask a question, Nick, just in regards to our current portfolio and our current situation? Have we got investments in oil and gas? BHP?
I think that's what they said, JB Ware.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we do. Yep,
We do.
Yep.
It's back in the list isn't back in the other confidential.
Yep. Look, are there any further questions? Okay, well, let's move into discussion. Did you have a question?
I'd like to ask a question. So in option 3, the first, like your bullet point, do they set suites of companies through JB Ware, like your ethical source goods group and all that sort of stuff? Like your nuclear power, thermal coal, oil and gas. Are they like groups of companies that are already been itemised?
Yeah, so when
through JB Ware.
Yeah, they look at they will just take, as it says there's 14,500 companies.
Yeah.
They are able to identify which ones sit in which group, depending on, some of them are just, they're involved in that, it's just a clear yes or a no or true false. And some of them, they then look at whether there's various levels of involvement in something like oil and gas, like the extraction down to equipment, but there is the one there that all related activity. So they go through and assess companies based on their financial statements, their level of revenue, where they're actually generating their money, and then they put them in these various buckets.
Yeah, that's all good. Because we don't decide, they decide.
No, they decide.
Okay, so we're happy to move into discussion. You're
Yes.
prepared to move.
I would move option 3 as listing all of those with a 10% factor revenue threshold. So all the ways in, yeah,
So you want to, so just so we're clear, it's option 3,
yes,
as listed,
as listed those criteria in paragraph 41 at 10%.
including all related activities.
And the cover all is the ESG.
Yep.
Isn't it? So,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, so that's it's been moved. And the second, do we have a seconder for choosing option 3? It's Kevin. Okay, it's now open for discussion. Is there any discussion? Alan,
Thank you.
Kate might want to.
Who's first?
Yeah.
you get to say first. I'm sorry.
Look, this has been a long time coming, and thank you, Nick, for the work, and JB Ware for the work in it. I've had a number of discussions in the previous term of audit and risk, and Andrew has been very encouraging on this. The one thing I don't think is covered in the paper, and that we have to be very aware of, is the reputational risk that we have. We cannot deal with this in isolation of our other role. This is a financial investment, but we are an environmental body, and we have to be seen to be doing our best and our for our ratepayers in the sense of being an environmental, having that at the heart of our soul, really, and also climate change. So I think this is a small step, really. I think that there'll be very little financial effect, and I take some comfort in what both JB and we have said and the conversations I've had with Andrew in the past on that. But I think it's all about our reputational risk and helping people realise that you can move investments. So just wanted to say that.
Okay, good.
Could I just clarify? So option 3 with 10%, and you might ask this, Richard, but I was just reading through. So ESG, controversy, pornography, predatory lending.
Yep.
So they're not a threshold, they're just out. Yeah. So nuclear power, thermal coal, oil and gas. So they'd be excluded on a 10% of revenue.
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry, I should say
yep. And then gambling and alcohol. So just are those on, both of those on all related activity? Or because gambling had operations and all related activity, two, yeah?
I thought it was at 10%.
No, it's the issue, and that's what I was trying to clarify. So around the operations being excluded, or the all related activities, which is much broader catch-all, and I thought what I heard was all related activities. It's just excluding everything, but we do need to be clear on that.
Yeah, and the alcohol there, we had two examples. Alcohol producer would, at a 10% threshold, would exclude 2.9. Alcohol all related activity excludes closer to 16%. So it's just those two, gambling and alcohol. It's a gambling operations or gambling all related activity, and alcohol producer or alcohol all related activities, because they were sort of sub options.
So I would probably, I'm sorry, I probably would have taken that first one, and the alcohol producers at 2.9.
And I would be easier able to support that and worry about where it actually stops.
I apologize.
Okay, no, that's good. So we've now confirmed, and just for Kylie, who's the one that's important here, no disrespect to the rest of you. So we've got the first 2 bullet points as they are. The third bullet point is gambling operations and or related activities. And then it's just alcohol producer at 10%, but we're dropping off the all related activities for alcohol.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. And same mover, same second.
Happy.
All right.
Thank you. Sorry.
Let's read that.
I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Thanks for the
Got 2
clarification.
questions. Alan.
Sorry,
Do you want to say this is not a question? Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, well, look, I'd urge you to urge this committee to adopt that recommendation, or almost anyway. And look, we heard from the 2 presenters at the public forum, and that was all very relevant. We've said much of this before, and I agree with Kate's summation as well there too. Look, I would say, in terms of the fossil fuel investments, thermal coal and oil and gas, there's very little difference in the number of companies excluded at 10% or excluded entirely. And I would urge this committee to go down, let's divest ourselves entirely from fossil fuel investments. This is in that blue column on page 59. It's a very small number of companies you would add by going forward. Leave that to you to consider.
I would completely agree with that. I would like to be fully divested of those things in terms of our climate change policies, and we have declared a climate emergency, and it is inconsistent with that strategy to have any investment at all in those companies.
Any further questions?
Yeah, excuse me. I haven't heard substantive evidence that going to this option is going to have big negative impact on our operations, business, given that, especially over the long term, the returns would be similar. The one thing though that is worth keeping in mind when you're thinking about ethical investment and what is ethical were some of the comments that JB Ware made around penalising companies that are moving to a sustainable future by not investing in them in a critical time. And I'm not advocating that, but when you completely 100% turn your back on them, then you can have perverse outcomes. That was their comments. Yeah.
Wood, did you have something to say?
Yeah, well, I was asking, Kevin's educated me. Well, I can make a comment, that's right. Well, I'll probably follow up a little bit from what Gretchen just said, because I remember that when JB we were presenting around that ethical sustainable goods, that we don't want to penalise the ones that are in the move, but then sometimes that happens. But probably my main one is around the gambling and alcohol one. I probably don't see us so much as a socially. We've got to be really careful where we draw. To me, where we draw the lines. Like I definitely agree with Alan with the resource, like protecting our the resources. But when we start looking at more social type stuff as opposed to environmental stuff, I probably have my doubts. If that makes any sense. So I'd probably prefer that if the gambling alcohol was left right out of it.
In fact, we're talking about ethical applying over quite a few areas, not just sort of the ESG. But
yeah, well, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Alexa.
Yeah, I'm just looking for something that I've read about Gretchen's argument. I really don't accept that argument, and I've read a lot about it over the years, and there has been a very, very long period of time that such companies have had the opportunity to divest themselves or to actually invest a decent amount of money into alternative energies. They have failed to do so generally, entirely across the board, and I have absolutely no truck with continuing any investment with them. So I would like to move an amendment. Can I do that now? Is this the moment? To actually divest ourselves entirely of all fossil fuel investment?
Okay, so
basically what
it is, but we have to have an amendment.
Yeah.
Yes, so the amendment we want to make.
It's not because we can't. Yeah, I know, but to make a recommendation that to the council that we invest.
Okay, so let's just clarify what the amendment is. At the moment, we've got the bullet point that says nuclear power, thermal coal, and oil and gas, excluding these based on a 10% of revenue. So we want to exclude. We want to get rid of that sentence that says excluded these based on 10% of revenue, and just have it as stated as nuclear power, thermal coal, and oil and gas. Is that?
Yes.
Just like that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the amendment.
Did you get that?
So you can move that?
I'll move that, yeah.
Do we have a seconder for that amendment?
Oh, sorry.
To exclude nuclear power, thermal coal, oil and gas.
Yeah, that looks good.
How are you feeling on that, Kevin? 'Cause we
No,
haven't
I'm
said-
not, no, because, well, no, that's a complete, I'm not changing my motion.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm quite
Okay.
firm on not changing it. Yep.
Okay, well, why don't we take the motions separately?
No, you need to vote on the amendment first.
Okay.
But then we have to have discussion on that amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's address that issue then, the amendment first. So we're excluding all thermal coal, oil and gas, nuclear power. Right.
Does anybody else want to have anything to say
Yeah,
on
Stephen,
that? I mean,
anyone? That's right.
I can't produce my evidence straight away for this, but I am quite convinced that we should be pulling ourselves right out of those investments. And I think that a lot of that's what we heard from our public forum today.
Mm.
And I think that's where we should be going.
Dylan, how do you stand?
How do I?
Where do you stand on this amendment?
Yes, I would like to divest entirely with that. And I guess if I've got a moment, just to say I've had talks with an academic at the university who's into this stuff about that issue. Do we support those industries that are moving in the right direction? And his attitude was, no, that argument doesn't work. We're better to reward them by investing them in again once they have got themselves out of those industries we don't like. So I would, if I'm not a member of this committee, so I won't be voting, but I would urge you to divest yourselves entirely from fossil fuels.
Yes.
Chair?
Yes.
And just on the current discussion, I'm just looking at the table just to make sure we sort of all on the same page with the numbers. So under the 10% threshold, I believe it's 826 companies would be excluded from oil and gas or related activities. And if the amendment, it would increase to 833. So just 7.
Okay.
I just want to check that I was reading that right. So the difference would just be an additional 7 companies. Now, could you confirm if that's?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's what I understood.
Okay, so it's not going to make a significant difference, is what we're saying.
So I'm happy.
So in terms of that, Alexa, I mean, it would be great to get this option through.
Yeah, if I can't get it through, I'll release this into those 7 companies, but I would like us as a council to be able to stand up and say that we have divested all of our investments in those companies.
Okay.
And that's quite important. Actually, I mean, I'm not going to stop us going anywhere, but it might be nice for Kevin to rethink what he wants to do about those 7 companies.
No need to rethink it, because I'm quite firm on my position. And I cite the examples of companies that are currently, and we have companies in my own area that are transferring to electricity, but have been unable because electricity sources are not available in their town, and they have been waiting years to do that. They've been waiting on the technology to do it, and this is major manufacturers. They are now starting to do that and divesting out of their holdings in oil, gas and fossil fuel companies, because now those resources are available. And so there are companies that will take time to do that. So academics, I'm sorry, they don't do the investment. This is a major investment of companies that are trying to do the very best thing, but because of the infrastructure that has not been available and haven't been able to do it. So
But no one's invested in.
Listen, just let me listen.
Apologies, go ahead.
I'll absolutely listen. So, we have got a threshold of 10%. This is showing that companies cannot grow any greater portion of their revenue at 10%. We've got a watchdog that will be watching it. So I'm comfortable to review that over time, but I think just at the moment, I think we're making a very, very good step to go to option 3. We had our 2 speakers asked us to go to option 3. Both speakers said option 3. They did not they did not articulate any changes to option 3. I'm supporting the people that took the time and the effort that we congratulate for coming here. I'm happy to support that. Understand what my colleagues are saying, but I think at this stage, I think that's a very, very good first step.
Okay, Alexa, effectively, we're doing the same thing, aren't we? But I mean, your
I
position.
realise that. I want to just put it to the vote.
Put it vote, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Amendment.
So we want your amendment to go to the vote?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we've got a first, we've got a proposer and a seconder.
Second was.
Yeah, me. Yep.
Okay, so all those in favour, please say aye. Against?
Yeah, that's a good point. Not entirely sure.
I just, Gretchen's an ex officio member and I'm not sure whether she can.
Oh, she can't, okay.
No, that's for the purpose of making it ex officio, she can, which is
Okay.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I
Yep.
thought.
So you
Sorry.
can.
That's why I did it,
Sorry,
but
sorry,
good
yeah.
for checking, yeah.
We'll clear that up.
We'll make
You
it
can
the
vote.
morning.
Okay, can we, look, we'll do this by, please raising your hands, okay? So in favour, please raise your hands. Good. And against? Okay, that amendment is
That's
carried.
carried. So
Yep.
now what happens
The
to
amendment
Kevin?
becomes,
Yeah.
Now we have got your,
No,
no, the amendment becomes.
the amendment becomes the motion. Okay, righto.
So 1 to 4.
Yep. So that motion now is it's fully option 3, and we have taken out the words under nuclear power, thermal coal, oil and gas. We have taken out the sentence excluding these based on a 10% of revenue and would exclude approximately 7% of investable companies. So that is now the motion,
And 1 and 2 and.
including
Yeah.
bullet point 1 and bullet point 3.
So the gambling bullet point is gone as well.
We didn't talk about gambling, did we?
We did initially.
In this, or in your amendment, you've excluded gambling?
Yeah, I wasn't talking about
It's
gambling.
been a
I was
long
only- I was only-
Okay, so gambling still
Okay,
remains,
yeah,
yeah.
that was silly.
Yeah.
Don't love it, but it's not
Yep,
too bad.
okay, so that's a
Yeah,
small
I
change to, it's a small change to option 3. So can we now be clear on that? We've got a small change to option 3. It's been moved. Once again.
So do I move it off
Yes.
now? No, you are.
I won't move it. The motion that I put and Kevin seconded has been altered.
No,
The amendment becomes a motion, so
The
now.
amendment becomes the motion.
Oh, sorry.
So the
Yeah.
motion is now moved.
Okay, so we've got
Alexis-
Alexa moving.
Yeah.
Have we got a seconder?
That's,
Yeah, you'd say
Gretchen
one.
seconded
one.
it.
Gretchen second.
Yeah.
Good. Okay,
That
now
becomes the
we'll put
motion.
this to the vote.
Yes.
By raising your hands, please, all those in favour, raise their hands.
Point of clarification. We've taken out the 15.8%. At the bottom, all related activities excluding, we've taken that out.
No, 15.8%, that's still there.
Did you have that in yours or not?
That was out.
The only amendment that's been
Mine
made
was
is
out.
under nuclear power, thermal coal, oil and gas.
No, but the original motion had that excluded,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's still excluded.
It's all sorry.
It's as it was,
The
yes.
amendment.
As it was.
No, the original, the
Chaos,
original,
you get me?
Kevin's motion had the 15.8% excluded, okay?
Yeah.
Then there was an amendment to that motion to exclude all
Thermals.
all thermals, all extraction stuff.
Yeah.
So now, and that one, so that now becomes the motion. So it's basically the original motion without the 15.8%, but then with all but with
Yeah.
taking out the 10% on the fossil fuels.
That's right.
Is it possible to get it on screen?
Yeah. we'll bring it up.
We did this.
I'm an
You
aye.
can go anyway.
Oh, no,
You can go, you're still.
It is only recommending, do we to be online?
You can go, yeah, that's right. Just-
Okay. Oh, she
I'll
was
take your vote.
Righto, this is going on the screen.
We'll take Collie out of here and have to type it up.
Well, I'll take you in there and have to sort it out.
Yes, oh, thank God.
That's correct.
Yes,
Okay.
and down the bottom, yeah, it's under, it's taken out, yep.
And you put the line through that bottom.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yep.
And related
That's a yeah.
activities. Yep,
Yeah.
that's great.
No, we cannot. No, it's not gonna scroll.
But that's what it is, you're finishing it
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
exclude
Okay.
2.9
Mhm.
at a 10% threshold, that's full stop. Right, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so we're all
Yeah.
on the same page with this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. This is very good. Right, are we ready to vote? Are we ready to vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favour, please raise their hands. All those against, please raise their hands. Okay,
Okay,
it's been
lovely.
carried. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
This-
Fascinating though this meeting has been. Yeah, I'm going to have to take myself off now as well.
Oh, for crying out loud.
We've still got quite a few items to cover.
Yeah,
so-
I almost saw the excitement.
Okay,
Bloody cherry picking.
okay, guys, just let's pull this together.
Thanks, Alan.
Just a reminder, we're still in a public meeting and live, so we just need to complete the meeting.
That's right.
So we've got,
Yes, okay, let's just gather our thoughts here. Yeah, we're looking at the revised audit and risk work program. If we can, that's 8.3, yes. Can I just ask about this mineral forum you were talking about, Gretchen? What's happening with that? This next meeting?
3:30,
3:30.
scheduled to start.
Okay.
It's civil defence, yeah.
Righto, thank you. No,
Look, this was really just put in there for completeness to make sure that that this was in front of the audit and risk subcommittee. Last meeting there was some changes made around things like the risk report was going to come back every meeting, and some other things dropped out from being every meeting, like policy overview, and then the comply with legislative compliance was going to go to 6 monthly. So it's just basically formalising so that you've got the list in front of you. And again, this basically only applies for the next meeting in December, and then first up next year we give you the new list. So this is always a work in progress and open to be revised at any time.
okay, so the recommendations, we note the report, and we endorse the proposed work program for the remainder of the 2023 calendar year. Kevin.
Yeah, but I'm really comfortable with that, but I do have a wee slight discomfort on in hearing now our deep dive into assets, which is really good after the events of Cyclone Gabrielle. I just would like some reassurance that the communication side, which I have around Gabrielle and the civil defence reaction and timings and efforts around that, I just need probably trying to highlight where do we get assurance, or where can we test our organisation in civil defence emergency management for such an event, and where that process is happening, and as audit and risk, where do we get an oversight or a tick that that is up to scratch. I'm not saying it's not.
No,
I
I
just
know
want,
what you mean.
yeah,
So just to be, so the deep dive and the internal audit are slightly different things. So we
Yes.
bring the critical risk deep dives, as you've seen today, with the two that we've done, health and safety and critical risks. The internal audit's a separate action, which we talked about, which is, I suppose you could call it a deep dive, but it has a slightly different purpose. In terms of civil defence, so the meeting we're having next, the joint committee, presents on the readiness of the Otago civil defence function to respond to events, and there's papers that are presented as part of those meetings, which includes training updates, the mock scenarios that have been carried out, and those sorts of reports. So I think the best thing there is for me to circulate the link to those papers and agendas, agenda and papers, sorry, and we can follow up if there is further information required from there, but that's the forum at which that Otago function reports to. And then you'll notice Gavin and Matt also bring reporting through a committee, the committee rounds as well.
Yeah.
So I'm personally, I have confidence we are covering that off. If audit and risk feel there's a need to report through to here, I guess I'd just, it's a relatively busy work program and it is being reported. And and I can share that, particularly the joint committee work through to the members of this committee or even the broader council, because Brian asked about it the other day as well.
Yeah. And probably my greatest concern amongst it would be technology vulnerability. It is probably the thing that I'm at the people preparedness and the technology vulnerability would be the two things that have come.
Probably a lifeline, sorry, matter.
Yeah.
Just beyond our
And
control.
I'm not saying it's not being done. I'm just saying I think that's a real good time to have a wee tweak at that to make sure we are. But other than happy to move that report.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, any discussion further? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you. Okay, what are we looking at there? 8.5 Treasury report. No.
Yeah, so this is a new report, so we use Bancorp as our investment advisor, or our treasury advisor. They advise on both sides, but particularly in our debt side. So they helped us with all of our LGFA lending setup and everything. So as part of that, they just provide a quarterly report that basically just takes our LGFA lending and runs it through their reporting system just to test our compliance with our various lending covenants that we've got under the Treasury management policy, and they're reflected in the covenants with the LGFA. So fairly standard report, and they give a bit of commentary, financial, market commentary and everything. So quite an interesting read. But the key thing for this committee is the compliance side, and where we're sitting within all those thresholds around how we've got that lending structured.
That's good.
Yep. Thanks for the report, Nick. I think it was very good. Good to get the information, and I propose to move the report.
Thank you, Andrew. Gretchen, second. No further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. That's good. That's carried. Thank you. Insurance update. 8.6.
Yeah, final item. Unfortunately, Janet, who wrote this paper, she can't be here today, so I'll cover it. But the purpose of this paper was really just to provide the Audit and Risk Subcommittee with an update on where we're at with risk pool. So most of you won't be aware, but going back to 2015, Council was a member of Risk Pool, which was effectively, a nationwide council insurance collective. So this council withdrew from that in 2015. As noted there, and there's some background information, even though we withdrew, we're still liable for claims that might be made against Risk Pool for the period that we were a member. But all councils have now withdrawn from it, and it's been in the process of winding up for a number of years. Back in 2019, we reported to the Audit and Risk Subcommittee that we had a call, which was, if you like, an interim final call. They were hoping that was just over 50,000, our share, to cover any potential claims. They were indicating at that time that there'd be a final call issued in 2022, 2023. So we're at that period now. Just recently, one of the councils that were a member, Napier City Council, have won a case against Risk Pool, and so there'll be a liability to them. We were hoping at this point we'd be able to say what that will mean for us. But what it will mean is that, they'll have to go through the process of assessing any other claims that might be outstanding and the likelihood of those cases being won or lost, and any potential liability. So at this point, we don't know what that final claim might be. but we're just pointing out this is the latest correspondence we've got, and that, once we know any further, and hopefully once we know what our final liability might be, we can let the Audit and Risk Committee know. We're in our annual report, the draft annual report. This is noted in the contingent liabilities with commentary along these lines around what's going, as all the councils that were involved, which was virtually all the councils in the country, will be doing, no doubt.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
So this could be quite an ongoing liability.
Well, potentially not. What we haven't been able to get any further information on what other cases might potentially be in the pipeline. But from the time that finished, I think it was, Janet would know the exact legal details. I think there was a 6-year claim period. So obviously claims had to be lodged within 6 years, and then you've got the process to go through for any go through the court. I'm not aware of whether there's any other claims or where they might be. So I can't really offer any further information.
Okay.
But once we know, we'll just continue to update this subcommittee.
There appears to be a time frame that's going to stop the you have to have them such and such. Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So they'll definitely know what claims got lodged and where they and where they're at. So it could be that this is the only one, and then it's just a matter of what's our share and how much of that potential amount due to that council had they already factored into their previous call. Cool. So they'll be going through all of their calculations, I'm sure. We just haven't got that information yet.
Happy to move to note.
Okay, so that recommendation has been moved to note and seconded. Thank you, Alexa. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Good. Well, that's the end of the meeting.
Oh,
So,
what about insurance? We're not
We've
worried
talked
about that.
that's what we've
Insurance
just done,
renewal.
really.
Well, that's the whole business.
Yeah,
that's what we've been doing. It was under the risk pool. It was that.
Insurance update.
that was the whole thing.
The risk pool paper.
Yep.
Which paper, Kevin?
3.4.
Say,
3.4.
Oh, yeah, no, I see.
You want to continue this meeting?
I want to remember
wasn't
reading
sure
that
that
and
we
losing
were-
that one, can't I, Nick? Yeah,
So,
that was
we're
just
clear?
yeah, just
Good on you,
magnificent,
Kevin.
Chair.
You can buy me a beer later to make my life a
Might
misery.
even buy you too.
Okay, look, we'll close this meeting with a
Thank you.
karakia. Kia tau, te rangamari e, kia unga ina iwi o te o. Let peace reign.
Please, please.
Right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Andrew. Hope you can get back.
Same.